Hello everyone, welcome back to the channel. Hope you all had a happy new year and a healthy one. I had a brief bout of COVID back in December just before Christmas that had me locked down for Christmas. Had no symptoms, thank God. I'm vaccinated and boosted, and I'm sure that kept things under control, but I was a close contact with someone who did get sick, and so I was home for Christmas. I did get to my daughter's for New Year's and spent some time with my daughter and my grandson, and basically had a pretty, worked out pretty well. But I haven't really shot much in the last month at all. So I am going to be back in the field pretty soon. But here I am now in my studio, that is living room. And I want to show you basically some of the shots that I was happiest with in 2021. I'm not necessarily saying they were my best images, but the ones I liked the most and that spoke most closely to me for the course of the year. I wanted to try and basically, I had really about 20 or so images, and I had a bit of a tough time winnowing them down to 10 or 11. So I've got about 11 photos here. And I'm going to go through them one by one and tell you basically what I liked about them, what maybe I could do different with them or some, in the future. And then I'll talk about what I want to do with the channel and with my photography for 2022. So let's get started with this first image here. I'm going to pop this into full screen so you can see it. As I go along, because I don't remember offhand all the extra data for each of these photos, I'll pop them onto the screen as I'm talking about them. This one I took in February in Harriman State Park. Is kind of a longish exposure, maybe a couple of seconds. And what I really liked as I zoomed in with my 70-200 lens is just the abstract patterns and the contrast of light and dark, and how the icicles were kind of backlit by the reflections of the water behind the icicles. And going to this park at this particular time specifically to looking for ice formations, and I was not disappointed. I actually had a couple of shots that I liked out of that shoot, but this one particularly spoke to me. It had another image that kind of reminded me of raptor teeth, but this one, it's just like abstract patterns, abstract reality. And as you can see, I also converted it, of course, into black and white. There wasn't much color in it anyway. There was some color in the rocks behind there, but monochrome really worked well for this image, as did the square crop. Okay, so this is the next one I took in, I believe, in March in a local beach here in in Queens. It's about a 10-second exposure, maybe longer. I don't actually, probably longer than that. I don't remember. I think I had a 10-stop filter on the lens at the camera at the time. It's kind of a bare scene, but I really liked how the water was rushing around the rocks. And once I put on a really long exposure, you can see how it almost looks like mist going around the rocks. I really like that look. The light was, as you can see, I did hype it up a little bit in post, not that much. It was near dusk, and so the sky was pretty pinkish anyway. But I did rework this a couple of times. In fact, I reworked it just 2 days ago to bring out a little bit more of the color. Some people don't like a lot of color. Some they prefer a muted palette. Maybe it's me coming from a painting background and having at one time used kind of an expressionist type of style in my painting. That type of coloration kind of speaks to me. I liked the line of the groin or the jetty here going out. It's used for fishing. As you can see, it's been there for a while. There was the wood is largely rotted away, but but I really like this. It's a very simplistic image. In fact, one of the things you're going to see as I move through this catalog is that a lot of the image compositions are really kind of on the simple side. I don't shoot a lot of big scenes, and the ones I do, well, maybe because I don't live in an area that lends itself to big scenes. But sometimes when you come into the details, like here's another one from the opposite side of the same jetty, and this one I converted to black and white. And you can see by this time the sun had actually gone down, so there's really not much of a point in shooting, in keeping the color. But I did still like the soft foam around the rocks. See right over here, and the rocks themselves. And I probably should have gotten rid of that graffiti that's right there, but kind of left it. It does say, this is New York. That's what kind of people do in New York, and it's not a natural rock formation anyway. So the fact that there's a little graffiti on there probably isn't really a big deal. All right, now this photo is the next is the first one that, or actually the first one in the series that I took on the first shoot of my using the Canon R5, which actually I'm doing this video on right now. I had taken some close-ups of the budding flowers on this lichen-covered maple tree. I actually done a number of close-ups of this tree and the flowers. And then I'm going off and trying to do some bird photography. Yeah, I got a few decent bird pictures, but nothing I was really that thrilled about. But then on the way back to the parking lot, I came back past the same tree, and actually I shouldn't say past, because as I approached the tree, the abstract patterns of the tree trunks and the scattering of the red flowers really kind of popped out to me. So I stood at a distance of about maybe 50 yards, and using my birding lens, my 150 to 600 Tamron that I had at the time, I leaned up against the pole to make sure that I was very steady. I used a somewhat longer shutter speeds. With that long lens, you really want to minimize any kind of shutter, camera shake, I should say. And standing at a distance really kind of compressed the perspective of the branches against each other, which actually kind of spreading fairly far out. I mean, this one that's over here is like really actually jutting right out towards me, but you can't. It's hard to see that. I really just like the two-dimensional patterns of this image. Kind of reminds me of a Jackson Pollock, who's actually one of my favorite abstract expressionist painters, I should say. All right, the next one now is the first of several shots I took in the Cape Cod trip in April. And now, of course, that's very much off-season. When I went to the shore, there was nobody there. This shot actually was another kind of almost throwaway shot, as again at the end of a shoot where I'd gotten some decent shots on this particular day, but nothing really to write home about per se. I was walking back along the shore towards the parking lot and came across this scene of receding tide against the sand, and it's again from this angle and with the camera that I was using, which actually was the R6, which I usually do my videos on. I had the 35mm lens on it, and I decided to just, rather than switching cameras and such, I just used the R6 with the 35, stood at an appropriate angle, and came away with this. I'm really happy with it. It almost looks like a drone shot of a larger scene, but it's really a very small little tide pool. You can see the water kind of receding back here. This kind of looks like a river delta. These could be easily these could have been very big mounds and such, but actually they're just really small little pockets of sand. But I really kind of did a lot of work in post to bring out the contrast. Did a lot of dodging and burning and luminosity masking to bring out all the little details. And I also liked how the sky kind of reflects in the water here. So ultimately, this was one of my favorite photos of the year. Okay, again in Cape Cod. In this case here, this was, let me come in a little closer here. Yeah, so this image was on a very cold, misty morning that I went out to the somewhere on the North Shore, a park on the North Shore of the Cape, and I was really, really happy with this. Again, it's another kind of lichen, actually a lot of moss on this particular tree. I'm not sure what kind of tree it is, but the red leaves against the green moss, and again, kind of a lot of linear abstract formations formed by the branches. Really caught my eye, and so I couldn't help but I guess I just have a thing for gnarly trees. Maybe it's a fetish or something. I don't know, but again, it looked a little bit like a Pollock to me, and I couldn't resist taking it. In fact, this one and the other one are going to be part of a triptych that I currently have in the shop getting framed. It's going to be the centerpiece of my living room once it's framed. And so I basically put this one and the other mossy lichen-covered tree around an image that I took last fall in upstate New York of some dangling branches against the fall foliage. So you're gonna have red and white on the one side, green and red on the other side, and orange in the middle. And it's really gonna look hot. In fact, if I can, I'm gonna pop it up in screen here, so you see what the finished triptych looks like. I really like the details that. Let me click back in. I really like how the R5 with this 45 megapixels brought out all these little details in the moss. I mean, it's really incredible. So, next photo. All right, again, actually I shot this the same day as the one that I just showed you. And this one is one where I kind of really went kind of artsy fartsy, so to speak. By when I processed it, this pier, there's like actually some marshland over here, and some more over here, and the horizon's right about here. But what I decided to do, since the light was not very good, it was kind of rainy and drizzly, and no sun at all. I decided to just go really, really minimalist and actually cloned out the horizon and also any of the reeds and such that were sticking out of the water. So you have a very, the ending is basically what you see here, kind of a pier to nowhere. I really love this image. All right, again, this is another Cape Cod shot. I went on. I guess I took about 4 different shoots that week that I was down there. In this case, I was on the shore at the National Seashore. It was low tide, so the water was kind of rushing in, or rushing out, I should say, as it came in. And this colorful little stone here caught my eye. There were some others here. You can see there's another one right there, but this orange stone really caught my eye. So I just set up the camera really low, just above the water, and and this was the result of several shots I took. Every time the water came in, or was starting to rush out, I took a shot. This was about 1.5 seconds, I believe it was, and this was a really successful shoot. Actually, maybe my best single day of shooting I had for the year, for the number of good images that I got. And unfortunately, shortly, a couple of exposures after this, rogue wave came in, knocked over my tripod, and doused the R5 in the surf. The camera survived miraculously enough. In fact, they did the whole. I covered that in the video that discussed this image and others. The camera survived. Lens didn't. It did have to act very quickly in terms of drying it out, popping the battery, getting into a rice bath for 3 days, and basically, the camera woke up, and thank God for weather sealing. Lens was a little wonky, but Canon was able to replace it within a couple of weeks. I had spill and drop coverage on it, so that covered the spill and the drop. So I didn't have any additional anything additional to pay for the lens, which actually I'm shooting on right now, the replacement lens. All right, so now here, this is an image I took in a hotel room in Williamsburg, Virginia. I had gone, my wife and I had gone down to DC to visit our daughter, and then we all went along with our grandson to Colonial Williamsburg. They live in Maryland, so this is about a couple hours away from there. They all went to the pool on a kind of a cool rainy day, but the place had an indoor pool, so they all decided to go to the pool. I'm not really a pool guy. So I stayed inside, and I just was playing around with the R5, just doing some experimental compositions, and came up with this. It's all about lines and shapes. I mean, you got to and light and shadow. You have the straight lines here between the corner of the wall and the table, and you have the rounded lamp and the rounded coffee cup, and you have the silver spoon and the white cup and the white lamp, and a lot of reflections going on. And I took about 27 different versions of this composition. This is the one I liked the best. In fact, I have it printed and sitting up, hanging in my foyer right now. I just really like it. Again, I like abstract shapes. I like the contrast of light and shadow. In fact, as really most of the shots that I took as favorites are kind of close, intimate scenes. I guess it's something that that kind of speaks to me. And it's something I'm going to have to think about as I go forward into 2022, because clearly there's a theme of the photos that I really like. Now this one here, this was early fall actually in Harriman State Park, one of my favorite shooting. It's a big park, and this is a lake I had not actually I scouted it maybe the week or so before when I was trying to do some bird photography. I didn't find any good birds that week, but I did find a couple of good locations, so I went back the following week and shot this one from across the reservoir. The sun, I got there before dawn, and the sun was just on a peak, creep over the hills that were to my left. So here you can see the line of sun had really just crested down below the treetops here, and it really lit up these trees in particular. And I did a lot of work in post to try and bring them out. In fact, I was playing around with it just yesterday, just to bring down some of the highlights in it. But So this result actually I think is even better than it looked a couple of days ago. I'm really very happy with it. Right here you see the foreground is still in shadow from the hills. But that didn't bother me too much. Again, the reflections actually they actually help bring out the reflections more, because the immediate foreground was in shadow, but the reflections are of the trees that are in the back that were lit up. So that actually kind of worked to my advantage as I composed and subsequently processed this photo. And one thing I did with this one and a couple of the other woodland shots you've already seen is add a little bit of Orton effect in post to kind of soften the edges, because the original image, being that this camera and lens are the camera is very high resolution. The lens is very sharp. It's a 24-105. It's extremely sharp, and so you had a lot of detail that actually was almost too much. So sometimes, especially with woodland images, reducing the crunchiness with the Orton effect helps soften the image, helps bring out a little bit of. It just makes it look to me a little bit pleasing, and yet you can still keep all the detail. Let's say if I zoom into this section of branches right here, you can see how much detail there is still in the tree trunks, in the little branches that are right here. There we go. And there's Lightroom just now rendering it. So now you can see how much detail from a good distance away the photo still retains. And also this camera, I'm really happy with it because of how much shadow recovery it allows, the sensor allows. In fact, I wound up actually selling the 5D Mark IV that I first shot the first couple of images with, because the R5 was just that much better. So I'm pretty much all mirrorless now, except for a couple of lenses that I still kept. Alright, so this now is a reflection shot that I took in Comset State Park, which is out here in Long Island. And I was looking for obviously fall foliage, but the scenes that were available to me weren't particularly attractive. I mean, I went to this one pond, and the trees that I actually wanted to shoot were kind of blocked by overhanging branches, so I couldn't really shoot them. But the pond in front of me caught the reflections of the trees, so I wanted taking a bunch of reflection shots. In fact, I'll put a link to the video that these images first appeared in. This one particularly, struck me. I think I slowed the reflection down to a couple of seconds. Again, I'll put the exit data will be down below, but you can see here there's a couple of leaves that are kind of slightly floating in the water here. But ultimately, the whole image reminds me of a Renoir. And again, not Renoir, Claude Monet. And again, if you're familiar with Impressionist art, Monet, of course, did a whole series of paintings in his garden of his lily pond. And the lily pond images are as much about the reflections of the trees and the sky in the water as they are about the lilies that are floating on the surface. And this image really is very much all about the reflections. In fact, I have another version of it where I just basically flipped it right side up, or upside down as it is, so the trees looks like it's going up right side up. I'm not sure which one I like best, but if I pop it up here, maybe you can let me know which way you prefer. And this is the last image, and I mentioned that I went to my daughter's house in Maryland, for New Year's, and she had some woodland right behind her house, and I was very fortunate as I was walking around, just hoping to try and catch some birds. This downy woodpecker lit right in front of me, so I was able to get really close with it. And this one I was using my the 100 to 500 lens, which is a tremendous lens for wildlife. I shot the insects with it, I've shot the birds with it, and this image particularly I'm really happy with. And one thing, I've always liked shooting birds. First of all, I was a bird photographer before I was a landscape photographer, and I still like to go out and shoot birds sometimes. And sometimes I'll shoot both in the same outing. I didn't vlog this one, neither obviously I didn't vlog the one I shot in that bedroom, but I'm really happy with this. If I zoom in here, you'll see that the woodpecker is trying to pick away at these seeds that are up in the tree. And I like bird photography that shows some kind of interaction of the bird with its environment, or maybe with the viewer, rather than just a bird that's just perching nonchalantly in a branch. I like it if it's actually doing something active, as this bird was. So there you have it. That's my top 11 photos of the year. Obviously I took a lot more. I mentioned I had at least 20 that I was really pretty happy with, and I just wanted to keep it down to 10 or 11 to make the video manageable. So now that brings up the image of the question, I should say, of what I'm going to be doing for 2022. As you can see, where I live doesn't lend itself really to grand photography, which is not a problem really, because I happen to enjoy woodland photography and I'm getting better at it the more I do it. But on the other hand, I do want the opportunity to shoot some grand vistas, just for the experience and really just to see more of the country and more of the world. So I already have, say, a workshop booked that I will be attending as a student in where the heck is it? I'm having a brain freeze all of a sudden. It's in Yosemite. Okay, with Alistair Ben as one of the co-leaders. Alistair Ben, whose channel Expressive Photography is one that I highly recommend to anybody who's interested in photography and really the art of photography. He's not a gearhead. At least he doesn't really talk about gear. Obviously, gear is important, but that's not his focus. His focus is on the meaning of photography, the meaning of the image, and what you're thinking about and what it means to you as a photographer when you're shooting it. And something that really kind of speaks to me. So I'm going to be attending that. He's going to be the co-leader with along with another photographer who's based out in Yosemite named William Neal. So I'm looking forward to that. It's going to be in October. And I'm trying to book a couple of other trips, either certainly somewhere else in the country, if not actually international, maybe Canada, for this year, so I can get at least a couple of really good, travel type photography photos. And in fact, since I do live in New York City, I don't really do very much, say, cityscapes or street photography, but that's something I want to try and do a little bit more of also. My channel obviously has always been oriented towards nature photography, outdoors, wildlife, landscape, etc. But since I do live in the city and it's a very photogenic area, obviously, that's something I want to try and work in a little bit more, and really just to challenge myself outside of my comfort zone. So, and that's something that maybe everybody should think about once in a while, especially as they go into New Year's, to what they can do different, what they can improve in, what weaknesses they have, or for that matter, if you have identified some skills that you really like in particular genres that really speak to you, then you concentrate on that. But in my case, I kind of like to try new things once in a while, so that's what I'm going to be doing for 2022. So let me know, which of these images that you liked the best, or maybe didn't think were so great, or whatever. I'm always interested in any kind of interaction that I have with you and my viewers. I thank you for taking the time to watch if you're still here. And if you want to see more of my content and more of my upcoming videos, then please give me a subscription if you haven't subscribed already. Hit the notification bell that's going to be right down there to your right as you're looking at it. And so you'll see the next time I upload some content. Again, I thank you for taking the time. Hope you all have a happy and healthy 2022. And I'll see you next time. Bye.